So recording to the cloud, and I'll wait to share the screen. So it's the 16th of February. I'll go first. Is everybody presenting, or you're presenting? Is how your thing? Shaq, Addison, Liam, are you presenting today?
Yes, I do have something, but yeah, if it's too much time, it's not like super important.
I think we'll have plenty of time.
Okay, then yes.
I'll be taking 1 minute today instead of my usual 40, so that'll move us ahead quite a bit. So I don't have a lab report today. I've been spending a lot of time working on prepping the Alta-X for the Guam mission. I got to fly the whole thing with the LiDAR on Saturday or Sunday, I think Sunday. And we found that the battery wasn't, there's a battery embedded with the LiDAR unit that just is there to sort of regulate the power flow so that it can finish writing out its data once the whole thing is shut off. It's kind of a weird system, but that battery wasn't charging. And so as a result, the inertial system and the GPS weren't aligned. It was creating all these problems. The flight was successful otherwise, but using the Emulet RS2 worked fine. So we're going to bring a different GPS with us this time instead of kind of the archaic version that we had been using. So I got that fixed. It turned out to be just a different charger. So that was an easy fix, but sort of, a little bit of worry. We booked our tickets, so I'm going to be gone from February 29th to I think 10th of March. So we can decide next week whether we want to do a lab meeting, which sometimes we do in my absence, or we could take a week off, which is also not such a big deal. So we'll talk that over next week. Maybe of course. Well, anyway, I did a second flight with the Alta-X yesterday to try to work out whether the battery fix had been successful, and it was. And then to investigate sort of a problem with calibration. So because we've moved the unit from one drone to another, the mounting system is different. And this particular mounting system is a little bit bad in that once you snap the LiDAR on the bottom of the drone, you can rotate it. And that's actually by design. Like, I mean, they think of it as a feature, not a bug, but I think for LiDAR purposes, it's a bug because it means that I can't reliably mount the thing to the drone. Like, it might be 1 or 2 degrees off from wherever it was. Like, I have to sort of eyeball it and try to get it. And even if I like measured it out, I'd still never get it perfect. So you can do what's called a bore sight calibration to try to like iron out those differences on the back end. So that's about where I am right now. Is sort of gonna, tonight or tomorrow do the bore sight calibration and see if that fixes it. And if it doesn't, then we're gonna send the data to the manufacturer of the LiDAR, and you can buy support. So it's going to be a little expensive. I think it's like $200 an hour or something crazy. But they will look at your data, and then they can process that, and then they can tell us sort of like what the bore sight calibration was. And then that'll sort of get me closer. Instead of sort of starting from 0, I can start, well into the calibration process for the next round. So that's about where I am. I've got a couple of other sort of like little tidbits of news, but I'll just wait on that to the following week. So I'll turn it over to Chat. Oh, and while this is loading, we at the department meeting last week, we got word that somebody had built an augmented reality sandbox a few years ago, many years ago, which we've done in the lab. That's a part of our history. But I haven't had one since I was at Northern Illinois University. So I never did build one at Virginia Tech. And I was thinking about building another one here, and just kind of, too many other things going on, so I hadn't done it. But anyway, word came that this one was available, so they're gonna be, our department said that we would take it. Brendan and I were pretty excited about it. So they're gonna drop that off at 10:30. I tried to do it afterwards, but they couldn't get people to do it before, so there may be a minor interruption at 10:30. Hopefully not more than a couple minutes, so my apologies in advance for that. All right, now we need to share our screen. Set it for everyone. Nice only having, I moved now there's a computer connected directly to the monitor here. So now I don't have this like dual monitor problem of like we're showing notes or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. What I did last 2 weeks is fun. The first one is about about the GoPro 12 setup. The GoPro Lab was installed successfully, but temporarily the GPS of time synchronization does not work for the GoPro 12 right now, but I think it will solve recently with more updates. The second one is about the testing the set script. This data set was collected in the last fall semester, and is one pieces of the trails is roughly taking about 15 minutes to create the piece of trails, and the one of the cons about these things is can only export it as point cloud. It cannot be exported with the raw data with the images and reconstruct it again. And also it's only I think it's only a 3D model, which is not consist with any GPS information within. And I think this with a gamble, which makes it more stable, but it's still some noises with my foot. I think in the second pieces can be a little bit disruption. And it has the maximum limit. That means only about 15 minutes what can be captured. Except the limit, the data will not be captured. Based on the quality, seems like the Pix4D can cache more in the environment, since like the set script can only capture the on-ground puzzle, which not contain anything from the outside the trails, which means the physics fees cannot be captured.
Is it only using the LiDAR data and then colorizing that from the camera? As opposed to Pix4D, which is using the photogrammetry and the LiDAR data?
Yeah. Seems like because the Pix4D, they automatically integrated the images and LiDAR together, and this one is like purely the LiDAR data.
Okay, with a relatively short range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Pix4D one seems like they erase some frequent appear noises, which means the wheels of the motor can be erased.
Yeah. What's the range on the LiDAR again for the Apple? It's like 6-8 meters, something like that?
Yeah, the maximum I think is 6 meters.
6 meters.
6 meters.
Okay. Yeah,
And I
pretty
think
short.
a little bit overlap between those two. And seems like this one is older than this, the surrounding noise, and this one is purely brown. And my next role is about the web app building and continue the last semester job. And what I want to do is to pull the basic images with the drone units down the web app and to show people what the drone image looks like. And my final goal is to like when people click in some point and they can show like in Google Map, they can get into it and like an AR shown. And my next scan I want to do is my new iPhone 15 Pro, which I haven't done any any scan with my new phone yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, the GoPro, I still want to do a bit of vast screen test, which I last time did is a narrow setting, and this time I want to do a bad maybe. It's better for the calibration things. And that's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, remote team, who wants to go first?
I can go first. Um, Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So this week I'm sharing stuff from my other deep learning annotation results. So last week I told that I finished the annotations for the day session. This week I finished it by the evening session, and the evening session was pretty different from the day session in the fact that the evening session had like minimal activity compared to day frames, and even though I annotated like a total of 1742 frames, I had to use a placeholder, just a placeholder class where I'd like select a random chunk of the image and say it is a placeholder class. And when I did that, I ended up with around 800 to 900 frames that had people, and everything else did not have any person at all. So later on, when I finished the annotations, I exported everything, and then I only chose the frames that actually had people from it. So that's one step additional to the day session where all the frames had people. And after doing this, I was able to train the model for the day. I had already done the day session and I did it for the evening session. Let's see. Oh my gosh. How do I make this play? There we go. I hope these play at the same time. So the one on the left is the day session and one on the right is the evening session. Uh, and I'm detecting people in the same exact video. I expected the evening session to perform a little bit worse, and that kind of held true because like there's one special chunk here where it's like kind of detecting a part of the door as a people category where like it should not be a people category, but the everything else looks kind of the same. But specifically here where it's like random frames, it's just detecting this chunk of point cloud as people, which is pretty surprising. I didn't expect it to be true, but I'd say the significance of having a lot of frames like changes the model by a lot. And this is like the results compared side by side. The end goal of this was to put all the annotations together and train a significantly uh, highly annotated model. Everything looks the same. Even the confidence value look like similar. They're not like varying by a lot. So I started comparing the day versus the evening, the result statistics, and when I looked at these, most of the things look similar. I was trying to make sense of like how these curve moves. And for the day session, I think it's like just looking at it from a layman's perspective, all the graphs look like much smoother than the evening category. Uh, this is way more smooth, and like everything looks smooth compared to the evening session, where it's like uh, very high peaks and bits, and the values are like varying by a small bit, not too much, but like a 0.014 going up to 0.0175. This should not matter. The high value should not matter much because this is the first epoch, but the minimum value should. And for the evening session, it does not go as low as for the day session, which was kind of what I expected from seeing the detection results. So I'd say if I only had trained the evening frames, my model would be much worse, and like having the day uh, have a lot of frames help significantly. Same goes for the other statistics, the box loss, object loss, and everything for the validation as well. I look much smooth for the day session, whereas like for the evening session, it's like going up and down everywhere. So the next thing I did was compare the day session training versus where I have all of the day and the evening session together. So this is the result for the day. The one on the left is the day session and the one on the right is the day and evening. The artifact that was like being detected here is like gone, even though I include the evening session. And yeah, there's a small delay for the right video, but like if you look at it like side by side, I think the same things are being detected. There is uh, no significant noise being detected. The one thing I observed while I was looking at these were the video on the right that is training the model that's trained on both day and the evening has the same people being detected but with a higher confidence. The values don't go like from 20 to 90, but like 70 to 72. And I think even that was a small slight improvement over the training model. And there are no artifacts. I didn't see any artifacts. Let's see. People should pop up. There we go. And when we are looking at it, I think there's a small increment in confidence. So I think the model that is trained on like more frames performs way better than like if it's not trained on a very high number of frames. And the same thing, comparing these statistics, the day has smooth graphs. I think the day and the evening does the same as well. I saw some peaks and pits in the recall and the precision metrics, but I couldn't make much sense of like, I thought as long as it goes to a very high value in the final epochs, it should be good.
Yeah,
And I think that's what I like was only focused on. The other thing I noticed was the starting value for the day was worse than the one for the day and the evening. So more frames automatically equal to more like better performing model. The same goes for this. I saw significant peaks and pits in the day and evening. Maybe the evening data was a bit more confusing. I don't know. But yeah, that's the like, addition of the evening metric did significantly improve the accuracy. So my summary of everything is like evening is not as good, but like when you combine the morning and the evening data set, like it's way better. So I was trying to look at all the uh, detected people and I wanted to see how it performed. The thing I did was like I had wrote out a prediction file that only gives me the file name, the class, the confidence, and the coordinates. These coordinates are like the top left X, top left Y, right bottom X, right bottom Y. So what I'm doing right here is like uh, I'm getting these coordinates, splitting them, and calculating the center X and center Y for the day, the evening, and the day and evening. I just compared the top five, like the first 5 points, and just looking at these, I see the evening has missed 1 point, which both of these models have detected. The second point, which has the coordinates of 622.5 and 507.5, the evening model does not have the same point. The other things I noticed was when I compare the day and the evening, even though the coordinates like are basically the same, there's a slight difference between like 369 and 370. So like a small shift in the center or the box created. I think that has got to do with like the box loss parameter that's like being trained, and that the variation did uh, like do this, I think. So like my basic idea was like look at all these points, and what I did was I tried to run build score on the whole set of points, like the day and the evening. But what I didn't realize was like I pressed like kept pressing shift enter and like I tried to run my code, but then boom, like nothing happened. It just like couldn't process anything. And this is like Python trying to run the well score on hundreds of thousands of coordinates, which I later realized when I checked the length of the NumPy arrays. I thought this was 19,000, and then I just ran it without checking, but I later realized it was like 193,000. So these are the number of people being detected in every frame throughout a day, and a day has like 3,600 frames, I think, or like something like that. And then if there is at least two people being detected on average per frame, that would be like a lot of people being detected. So I think that that's not a good ideal number to run Bell score on.
hmm,
So what I did was I just took the first 5,000 points from each, from the D, and like compared it with like D plus evening. I chose the D plus evening as the constant reference. This was because this had performed way better. I was just trying to like see what the combinations of different coordinate systems would give me. And I think when I just look at these, some of these do make sense, some of these don't. So like the main thing I was looking at was R square and DI. R square basically means how related the two sets of points are. Both of these like are giving me a very highly significant 0.999, which is like basically equal to 1. And the other thing I was looking at was like the distortion index. And the distortion index comes out as a very small value. But when you compare these two, it basically says the evening data set does not agree well with the D plus evening when compared with like the day and the D plus evening. So that was my basic summary. One thing I did want to mention about the build score was I just revised everything we had done in the past with the build scores. I had run this on like a small set of points, and when we are writing these out as like the return results, it also writes out the coordinates of all the points of Sprinkle, and that might be one thing that like if we remove it might help. Like I don't know if it will, because like writing out 173,000 like in the output would be but yeah, I can still like get out like chunks that I need. I still need to figure out which of these matter the most and which of these are like okay to ignore. I was thinking chamfer ratio, the media parameters, and like the precision and the recall. Uh, and yeah, I think that's it. So the other thing I did was when I was trying to annotate, like I had already annotated the intensity file, but the same objects would be people in the maximum or DSM frames as well. So I did not foresee this when I was like annotating at first. So I just selected randomly the frames that I wanted. And now I realize that I have to get the same frames, but for DSMs, like the same seconds, same frames. And I did not see this when I did this last. So what I did was I had to write a code that basically read out all the text files, made a list of the file names, and then copy all the maximum files. This took way longer time than I thought it would, because it would go into the build directory, go into each folder, looking for the file name and then copy it. I could have done this like more efficiently, but I didn't think it would take like, I think this took 10 hours of looking into files and copying the
I'm not sure I understand what the problem was. Can you say that again?
Yeah, so when I first did my annotations, I just randomly selected out the intensity frames, and that was from like a random minute of a random day. And now I realized that I would need the same frames for the DSM,
Yeah.
and like I did not copy that when I generated the random list, so I would have like just
You just need to
find
go
the same.
back and find the matching
Yeah,
intensity images. Oh,
yeah,
10 hours?
yeah. I realized later that I could have done this like way more easily, but I just made a list and then I started looking for like in each folder. I should have done like something with like string matching, because like the date time were already in there. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is
Did it run
this
while
is
you were
me
sleeping?
being not really, but I was doing other things. So yeah, this was running on the background. So
Alright,
it took me an eternity and maybe a bit more, but no for loops. That's a reminder. A reminder every year is good. So when I did all of that, what I'm now doing is like running my model on the DSM dataset. So I just did this yesterday night. I started the modeling, and it should be over by tonight. And I think this is going to be my second last model that I run. The last model is going to be the same annotations, but the DSM and the intensity together. So I'll keep you updated on like when this is done. This is probably taking a chunk of Roosters memory. So this is me after running every model and yeah. So the other thing, yeah,
I got a question. So this is the day plus evening, right?
yes,
We're not looking at those separately anymore, like,
no,
okay.
yeah, yeah. I was kind of doing that because while I was doing the evening session, I still wanted to like run something on the background, annotating. So that's why I did it. Yeah.
So
So
two more models to train, right? So,
yeah. When this is done, there's going to be one more, and that's it.
okay.
Yeah. I did make some progress on the writing, not as much as I wanted to, but like I think I did a small chunk of writing, and like I changed and fixed some figures. So a lot of goals that I had like set for a few weeks, I think I'm pretty happy with like what I did this week with like especially with the taking out points and running statistics on them. I still need to like figure out how I could maybe run the build scores on bigger data sets. Not maybe not 179,000, but like at least I tried it with 5,000, it ran. I tried it with 10,000 points and it did not run. So maybe I'm doing something wrong. So I'll probably like to run more experiments.
We got maybe this is a detailed question we can get into after the meeting, but I don't think we need to run. I don't think we need to run BDR for sure. I'm convinced because it's an expensive computation because we have to like bootstrap those. I don't think that it's doing anything all that useful. So I think the better one is probably just like the standard positives and negatives and stuff that we did. But the question that I have is, these things are in time. So you're not taking the whole stack of detections and treating them as if they're all at the same moment, right?
I think I am doing that.
Oh.
They do have a timestamp attached to them, and I could like take out chunks as well.
Well, I
just like-
think if you do all the detections and you have a big stack, then isn't it as if if all of the detections happen simultaneously and there's a buffer associated with, then it's gonna be full of detections, right? Like it's gonna be as if the room is full of people.
Yeah.
So you have to do them for each individual timestamp. Like I think you have to compute them.
like aggregate them or like do something like
You'll
that.
have to do, which we hadn't really. Yeah, we better talk about this.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah,
but
I think that's
I think how that's done is going to make a big difference for those numbers. Okay, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that with me.
so that's it from me this week. I'll probably run the other model I just talked about, and I'm gonna do a bunch of writing.
Sounds great.
So I can go ahead and go next if that works.
Sure. Yeah. Be right back. So there's coffee, by the way. Okay, cool.
Start that. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so I have a couple different things this week. So I got a large chunk of my method section done. That was kind of my main goal this week was to catch up on the writing. I'm trying to kind of keep it so that if I do some research work, then following the writing catches up to that, and then doing more research after that. So now I'm back to the point where at least in terms of like my method section, stuff like that, my writing is caught up to where I am in terms of research progress. So that makes research progress the focus again. So the section that I've been working on was taking the collision algorithm that I've been working on and like synthesizing that into words and explaining like what each part does and the reasoning for each part. So it was about 1,800 words total for explaining like every step of the process. So then the next thing that I was working on this week was generating these like box and whisker plots for the temporal analysis. We had done a meeting, I think 2 weeks ago, and Dr. Abaid, who's in my committee, she suggested rather than just showing like a bar plot of the mean collisions for each day of the week and things like that, set up a box and whisker plot instead, because that would give a little bit better of a representation of, first off, the median would probably be a better representation than the mean in the situation, because there's a couple days in which there's these really like there's a lot of outliers. So there was like a Studio 76 event on one Wednesday, and it caused the Wednesday mean to be higher than the Monday mean just off that single Wednesday. And so I ended up making two plots. So this first one is showing the outliers as like separate circles and like not including it as like what would be like the max value of the whisker. And then the second plot is where I've like changed the way that the whisker parameter works, so that the maximum is actually the top line of that whisker. So here's this first one. So this is where the outliers are shown as circles. Um, and like if we look at the actual days themselves, the Wednesday median is still a little bit higher than the Monday median. Um, Generally, I was trying to kind of looking to compare Monday and Wednesday together because like the class schedule and things like that should be relatively similar.
Um, here, let's take a quick timeout, Addison, because I don't want to miss this, so.
Sounds good.
Everybody can just take,
You can go ahead if you like.
no, that's good, we'll just take 5, everybody.
Well, get ready to schlep.
Perfect, we'll,
Send a minion.
Addison, are you concerned as far as like comparing Wednesday and Monday that like people Monday morning classes are just like maybe not go because they're lazy? Like, is that
It's
is it-
something that I can look at.
okay?
It's definitely something that I can look at. Like that's the cool thing is that like I don't have I'm not expecting them to be the exact same. There's definitely going to be some differences between them. But I guess generally at least the class schedule between Monday and Wednesday should keep those relatively similar. I'll have to find those the other charts that I had where I was basically looking at like per hour of the week and seeing like what the Monday 9 a.m. average was and compare that with the Wednesday 9 a.m. I know the Friday 9 a.m. is a lot higher because they do this like donut event. So consistently like every Friday morning, some of like the highest number of collisions that I get, which is honestly is a good chunk of why Friday is so much higher than the other days is because they have donuts in the like buildings community assembly. And so faculty, students, everyone is there for that because people like donuts and people like free donuts.
This is true.
Is this for the whole semester, Addison?
Yeah, this is for the whole semester. Yeah, this was that one like big out.
The Studio 75 or 76 event? Or the
Sorry.
Is that the Studio 76 event?
Yeah. And those were all in like 2 hours worth of time too. And
More
that's
than-
like
more
I
than
have this
200 collisions.
I have this like event filter in place so that like if there's a collision at one location, there can't be another collision within 2 meters of that one in 5 seconds
Mhm.
temporally. And like still with that filter being in place, there were like 300 collisions in an hour.
Okay.
The theme of the show last year was glass. And this is the crystal structure from silicon.
Okay.
And I'll show you, we
Oh,
did
you guys have
an
a band
event
over here?
for that glass show, which was interesting.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for bringing it in. Is there more stuff in there?
It's all in the hallway.
It's all in the hallway. Well, that was easy. All right, thank you so much.
Look forward to talking with you, working with you, sharing the experience. The drive that's in that computer was my backup drive.
Okay, is there a username and password for that? Is it written on the?
Take the username. Add spaces. No trail space. You didn't get.
Okay, got it. Is the, that's fine. All right, thanks.
What happened is the original drive, the original functional drive we used here.
Yeah.
We found it and I closed it and I will make a macro image of it.
Okay.
Watch the top. I think I already done it. So. You probably have hardware rather than that hardware.
Perhaps. Well, what, we'll, resurrect. My goal is to take everything I did and put it together and start there. In the sand, where is it, is there sand? Yes. Oh, yeah. Anywhere on the wall.
Oh, hanging all up in a little while. All right. What, one more? One more. We all use 3 boxes,
Okay.
and the 4th one. They said, oh, well, here you go.
Perfect. All right, thanks.
And it's the good optical. The projector has some flaws in it,
Okay,
but for this purpose, you might.
okay. That's fine.
Look forward to chatting.
Yeah, we'll get it put back together and we'll start there. Thanks so much.
Thank you for letting us interrupt your class.
Thanks. All right, thanks, everybody. We got that. It's gonna be an AR sandbox, which those things are lots of fun.
That's exciting.
Yeah. It was good. It was a good find. All right, so we'll get back underway. Addison, I wanted to compliment you on the excellent use of two-part group buy to do the work in one line.
That was a Chat GPT savior right there.
This is fine.
I read it afterwards and I was like, okay, I think that makes sense. It was not something I knew that you could do. And so I was like, first I have to group it by these Wednesdays and then take the sum of all the Wednesdays individually. But like it was basically because I have like the week of the semester and the day of the week, it can just do that in one line, which was really cool. And I didn't know that was something that was possible, but learn something every week, which is the best part.
Yep.
But yeah, so I ended up making 2 plots. So this first one has some of like I guess this was like the default. The outliers are kind of automatically shown. I think it's if it's more than like an expected amount of standard deviations away from what it should be. They plot them separately rather than considering them part of the whiskers. So you can see, I think there were a couple like Tuesday afternoon events, and then here's this big Studio 76. And then additionally, interestingly, the Monday and Wednesday saw these 2 like days being part of Thanksgiving break. Here they were represented as outliers, but every other day of the week they were included in with like the rest of the data set, which I thought was interesting. Maybe it shows that Monday and Wednesday generally follow a little bit more of like a compact, like regular pattern. And so that I guess the quartiles are pretty close to the median there. So that the Thanksgiving break weeks were, I guess, outliers, but with the rest of them, maybe there was enough variation between like week to week that the Thanksgiving break, where there were like literally almost no collisions, they weren't considered, which I thought that was interesting. That just for those 2 days that they were outliers and not the other ones. But yeah, so then the other plot is basically the same thing, except the whiskers include the like outlying circles instead. I'm curious as to what people think, because I don't know enough about statistics to know which one of these is like a better practice. In
I don't
terms of
think it makes
like,
too
what-
much difference.
Okay.
I probably like the one with the circles more.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, I wasn't sure because it was like, I always think of like this as being like the maximum, but then you have like these things that are above the maximum, and especially on Tuesday where there's like 3 that are above the like expected maximum, I guess.
Yeah, it tends to, I mean, from a visualization side, it tends to draw the eye towards your outliers, which is not always what you want, right? Like the outliers are things you shouldn't pay attention to, but do you find yourself looking at those circles more than you find yourself looking at the boxes like I do? So
Mhm.
like, that's not great. Like you want people to kind of look at your data. That said, it's nice to sort of symbolize those differently. I don't think that it really makes that much difference. Probably the next suggestion that you're going to get is to run statistics on these. I would probably suggest running those statistics in we've had really good luck with JMP,
Mhm.
which we like a lot in the past. I don't know who has the most expertise in that. Probably Gunjan, if you want to. I don't have you used JMP before?
I used it for a class in undergrad like a couple times.
Okay.
I'm familiar with it, but it's been a while. It would take me a little
It's
bit.
pretty intuitive, and so the
Relearning.
idea would be use your Python code to write out the data that you need to do the analysis in. There's
Mhm.
nothing that you can't do in Python that you could, I mean, you could just do the whole thing in Python. Python stats, so you would use like stats models to do it. I think Jump is probably gonna be faster, like it's designed to do this, like the user interface is helpful for sort of like shepherding you through what you need to do. It's easy to get hung up in Python, like getting your syntax precisely right, and even then, like you're not always sure that like it's doing right. So long story short, my advice would be to export the data tables that you need to do the stats on, and then run the stats in Jump. I don't usually like going outside of Python if I don't have to, but this is one exception.
Good to know. Yeah, I'll add that to my add that to my goals for next week. Yeah. So then
I'll tail on that, which is I I don't care about the stats. Like I can see everything that I need to see from this figure. The stats will be there to tell you whether Friday is really statistically different than Thursday. I don't find that a useful, to get a p-value off of that, like I don't find that a useful addition to my knowledge of what's going on in the week. But some people are really obsessed with that stuff. This is a bit of an aside, but it's good to talk about. So these like significance testing has become its own ritual in science. Like there's a reason why it's there. It's useful in lots of contexts. But the obsession with people to like run a stats test and get a p-value, I just don't like it. It doesn't tell me anything that I don't already see from this plot. So
isn't it just like the days are already independent from each other? Like you don't really need to.
well, you would use essentially like a multiple comparisons, sort of like imagine you're doing a bunch of t-tests to say is Friday different than Saturday? Like
Yeah.
statistically significantly differently with a p-value less than 25. Like I don't know, like I don't really care, like probably. I don't know, it just doesn't. Those tests are there to tell you whether you can make inferences. I'm comfortable making an inference that Friday has more collisions than Saturday, like based on this plot. And that's what the stats do. Now that said, I think there's value to be gained here just by sort of going through those motions and like learning that. Like, so I'm not opposed to doing the statistics. I think that the stats are there for a reason. They're the language that science uses to level the playing field and to say what we count as evidence and what we don't. So like that's the argument for it. But like I think you'll find that at some point you'll stop caring and you'll get what you need to get out of the plots. Anyway, bit of a diversion there, but that's what these lab meetings are for, to talk about data analysis more than just sort of classroom based.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you. I I'll have to refresh myself on Jump a little bit. But I think I still have it on my computer, which is good.
They teach Jump here in anything?
No, I don't know, actually.
Okay.
I know not for the statistics.
And
part.
I know R seems to be heavily used.
Yeah.
R is great for stats. No objections there. I think Jump is easier for most people than learning a whole nother language to do.
Yeah.
But I'll show you guys Jump, and then you can tell me whether you think it's useful
Yeah.
or whether you should just do everything in R.
Ours syntax is like definitely a lot different than most programs, and it also, I think it starts its count from 1 and not 0.
Oh yeah, some do.
Yeah.
MATLAB is a wonderful.
That's so annoying. I hate how R does that.
Okay, all right. Sorry for all the diversions, Addison, but it was.
Oh yeah, no. I
conversation.
like when we have conversations during the meetings and stuff. It's helpful. I don't have too much more anyways, so that works out. And yeah, the last thing I was working on this week is the animation overlay for ground truthing. I didn't actually include the video in here. Because I haven't done another screen recording of this. It works, but I think there are some problems doing it this way. And so the first one is like there's almost this like raster visualization resolution sort of thing in ArcGIS Pro that I can't manage. And I've played around with it a bunch. I can't manage to quite get the rasters, and maybe I just need to keep working on it. I can't quite get the net CDFs, like each layer, to like resolve itself in the same kind of crispness that I can get with the animations.
Alright.
And so I end up kind of struggling with like telling what's really happening here. I think there was this interaction between these two people, but like at the specific instance of like here's this person and here's this person, it's hard to
Yeah,
like it's hard to tell, you know, what's really happening here. With the animations, I think you can almost like see it with the resolution a little bit better.
okay, so, alright, so. Shashank, you're not using Arc to do any of your annotation, you've got custom code that does all of this, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, maybe
Yeah,
it better,
we
I mean, I feel your pain, I didn't anticipate this, Addison, that this would be such an issue, but. Maybe this is the wrong way to go, like, the benefit to Arc is that you can sort of like. Ideally, like scrub to particular times and like look at
Okay.
this, but like. Maybe not for animation creation is it the best solution, is that how you feel, Shashank?
Yes, I had tried some animation generation in ArcGIS Pro, and I had the same experience. It generates like thumbnail level resolution, not like it does not render a good image quality at all in the animation. Yeah.
In that case, maybe the best thing to do would be for you guys to put your heads together and adapt some of the code that you've got already, Shashank, to the problem that Addison has. Could you guys maybe make a arrangement to get together for an hour or two to? Because I think,
Always.
Shashank, you've
We
got
can
code
find some
that
time to do
does
that.
a good chunk of this and it'll need to get adapted, but I think that's probably faster than Addison, you just like starting on it from scratch. And it's a good experience to like work together anyway, both for, you know, just the fun of working together, but, you know, hammering out code together is an important skill, so, yeah, worth it for that reason.
Yeah,
When I
definitely.
was generating the percept over animations, the videos that I was making, I think that code would like simply just work for the collisions. I just taking the date timestamp and like putting a point where the date time was. Like in a TIFF file, I just like putting an X on a particular coordinate. So I think that should work for this as well.
Was that
Cool.
using the like the video animations
Now it was just using like the frames.
from the net CDFs or from the
I was not
like the
using
raw
the
data?
NetCDF. Yeah, I was not using the NetCDF from
Okay.
the raw data. Yeah.
We should still
Yeah,
have
I
all
think
the raw data, so.
yeah, I think the animations actually they seem to work better for me. Because that first one is resolution and the second one is the playback speed. Arc is like really clunky here, and I don't know why they need to do this. But the fastest that you can get one of these to like continuously play is 1 frame every 2 seconds. Meaning to watch 1 hour of stuff happen, it takes 2 hours. Which doesn't also include there's like almost sometimes a little bit of like a load lag when it has to refresh each netcdf frame. So I think the best option to combat that would be to have it play through the full hour and screen record that entire process and then go back and watch a like sped up version of my screen recording. And I think that would actually work for maybe like 1 or 2 hours of the data.
Yeah,
Is kind of watch that on like 4 times speed, and then I'm getting, you know, 2 frames every second instead of one every
Yeah.
2 seconds. And
yeah, that's not a bad idea. I think probably let's try adapting Shashank's code and see how that goes. I think
yeah,
that'll-
definitely.
I think it'll look better. Don't forget when you do that to make sure there's a duration to the collision so that it's not like here,
Mhm.
got it. But like, you know, some parameter that you can set to like have it stay for 5 seconds or 5 frames or 20 frames. I mean, you'll run it and you'll be like, ooh, that parameter is too low. Let me crank it up to 20. So make sure you can adapt it. Cool.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out a way to do that in the data, but I think that should be manageable. And then so yeah, the other thing was using the animations instead, which I guess is especially if if we can get the like the percept overlay that Shashank was doing, if we can get that to work, then that's like even better.
Yeah.
Because my main comment with this is like it's currently not directly overlaid with the percept and collision data. So the arc method kind of lets me make this like a little bit higher level of visualization where like they're stacked on top of each other and you can see here's this exact point and it's this exact point rather than this
Yeah.
spot over here is the same as the spot over here and
Yeah.
like so yeah, if we can get that working, that would be amazing. I'm still working on getting the timestamp added to the animation. I think I actually have that fixed now. But I haven't finished running it yet. There was some issue with the file names, and then I also realized that I had an issue with the copying the file path while writing it out. That it has to do this like MNT/D rather than using like the D colon. So I think that was part of the problem. But I think I'm planning on running this after the meeting, and I think I have it fixed now, which is good. So yeah, so that's what I have for this week. My goals for next week, I want to keep working on the writing, so that'll take me making a little bit more research progress to do that. And then getting a good portion of that ground truthing done. So figuring out the overlay sort of stuff and doing it for maybe a day or a couple hours worth of data. And just trying to get a decent idea of like an estimate for the false positive rate. Because I think once I have that, then I can start to work on some more like the analysis and say, not only do I have this, but like I do feel like it's pretty accurate. And it can also give me an idea of like spatially are some areas more accurate than others, and like why would that be the case? Is it because there's more sensors? Is the angle of the sensor different? All sorts of different stuff like that. So especially when I'm looking at false positives, I almost want to like document where they're happening in the space too, and seeing if there's some sort of like pattern there. But yeah, that's what I have for this week.
Great. I think I'm not sure if we communicated timeline, but I think Tim and I are hoping to see the A thesis draft by April 1st or so. To kind of keep that in your heads.
Yeah, I think I'll be on time for that. I think. Fingers crossed.
But mostly on schedule. Still will take some work, but I think we're all right. All right, let me check on time limitations because you often have to leave for class. What?
Yeah, today I have to leave like extra early because I've got a math exam. So I just want to like be there like on time.
Yeah. Is there still time to do a lab report now if we do yours?
Yeah, mine is really short this week because I was like studying for it. I didn't upload the slides yet. It's like because it's only 2, so I could just like run through it really quick. If that's okay.
Yeah.
Like just like yeah. So I went through the Mavic 3T stuff and I found all the optical sensors. I didn't have time to like write goals or anything, but so I went through Mavic 3T, and it has the CMOS sensor, a 1/2-inch optical sensor size, which yeah, and then the image size is 280 by 3,956 pixels, and the focal length was 162 millimeters. I hope that's correct.
It is not correct.
Okay. Yeah, I was very reluctant when I found these answers. So, yeah, I kind of sped through this fast, so
Okay,
forgive me.
No, that's fine. You have to go back to the image size. I'm sure is fine. What else did we? There was something in the notes that we saw. The metadata. I don't remember.
Yeah, I couldn't remember how to get back to the metadata, so that was my like biggest downfall.
So if you just right click on the properties of the image and go to like that, you'll see there's like a tab that has and you'll be able to see most of them. There's a tool called EXIF tool where you'll be able to look at everything that's in there.
Okay.
So whether all these numbers are in there or not, I don't know. They might be, they might not be.
Okay.
So Get a better estimate for the focal length. It's probably in the neighborhood of like 16.2. So maybe you're just missing a decimal point. It's probably in the range of between 8 and 20. You know, it might be as high as 24, but that's probably the most it would be.
Okay.
My guess is it's probably in the 13 neighborhood. And then the sensor size, you'll want to get that to like a precise millimeter. So it's probably on the order of, they're small, right? So you can think of these in real terms. It's what you're looking for is literally the size of the image sensor in the camera.
Yeah,
So it's probably about this big.
yeah, I don't know why it was saying half an inch, which was like.
No, that might be right. Like that's probably about half an inch. But what you're gonna need is like millimeters. So it'll say like 6.7 millimeters by 8.9 millimeters. Like those are the numbers that you're looking for. It's got to be like, alternatively, you might find that it gives you a pixel pitch, which means each pixel is X big, and that would be in microns. So it would be like, no, you have to do the math, but so those would be what you're looking for. So give it another go.
Okay.
Cool.
And then the second thing I tried to do was I tried to like just run an image through the thermal converter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got like stuck like very quickly because the one like cause like the main package that didn't work was I think it was custom Kinter. Like I got stuck right where it would import custom Kinter. And I was trying to use Jupyter and like Colab, maybe that was a problem, but
Well, then it should be a standalone app.
yeah, the standalone app for, I'm not very familiar with using like GitHub codes yet,
Oh, okay.
so that might be,
Yeah, there's so what you'll need to do is you'll just download it and then there's just an exe file that you run. But you'll need a PC to.
an exe, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably it.
Yep.
So I have not, had familiarity using that, but that's that's pretty much it.
Sorry, good luck on your math test.
Thanks,
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll see, so we'll see you around 2 o'clock. We've got a department meeting at 1 o'clock, so I'll see you right after that.
Okay, sure.
I'll text you if something looks like it's gonna go.
Yeah,
I'm learning, like, sometimes people are very punctual with these meetings and sometimes they can go on, and like, there's nothing I can do about it, like,
yeah,
I can't be like, I got a meeting.
okay,
So like, of all the meetings that faculty have, like, those are like top 2.
Yeah.
You gotta like make time for them, but those just bust out your schedule.
yeah, it makes sense, yeah, sorry about the quick lab report.
That's all right, we'll catch up in the afternoon. All right,
All right, thank you.
yep.
Good luck, Peter.
Thank you.
All right, Liam.
All right. Yep. Let's see. Share screen. Here we go. Okay. Slideshow. Okay, so this is a paper that I found last night in this and was reading more this morning. So I haven't finished the paper, but I thought it was interesting enough to really kind of talk about. So this was more of a consideration of ethical use of LiDAR data. And it kind of mostly focused in like the Maya archaeology and like South America and Central America. Yes. So kind of the background that they were discussing was that with the development of LiDAR technologies, there's obviously been a significant increase in data size since just like strictly size of LiDAR files as well as how much data is available. So they have to start considering more storage considerations, which then kind of led to differences in how people want to treat LiDAR data. So differences between people, some people think that it should be, all data should be open for everyone around the world, just period. But some people, particularly when you're talking about more businesses and governments, want to have more protective or kind of restrictive data on like who can access it, just for obviously military concerns. They don't want people to just have all the information on their country, as well as they don't want necessarily all that data to be publicly available because it also would help people like looters or grave robbers to also have the data and then would make it easier for them to find more places. So they kind of addressed kind of the couple of big issues. So the first issue was again just the data access. So they kind of mentioned that LiDAR data is costly and it's and because of this, it's funded by assortment of private and public organizations usually, and they mentioned that typically these organizations have overlapping goals when it comes to data accessibility, so it doesn't usually create any issues. But again, some people try to restrict it, and some scientists or some researchers who push for open science, as I mentioned earlier, are kind of against this because they think that everyone should have access to this. And the paper kind of mentioned that this will obviously lead to tensions and potentially in a new form of what they called, or they considered new forms of colonialism, and that foreign researchers from, say, Europe or other places around the world would then be kind of pushing their views on a culturally unwilling nation. So for personal reasons that a nation doesn't want to disclose that data, then trying to force them to do so, they kind of consider what could be follow under the lines of a new modern form of archaeological colonialism, which I thought was kind of an interesting viewpoint. And so a second issue they raised was, again, kind of who are the other benefits or who else benefits from this data. So they mentioned kind of discussing for public data, then obviously you can have military or just development things if it's public, then they can access it and it's very helpful for them. And also local communities can benefit from having public data because they can make kind of their own discoveries, or they can kind of piggyback off of discoveries made by researchers to promote tourism and kind of other industry in their area. But again, also looters and pillagers. And they mentioned that historically, not all looting is on individual level, and it potentially would be far more harmful if looting organizations or groups would have this data, because then they would be able to enact more damage. So they kind of listed some of the debates. The primary one was some of the debates in this field. So the primary one was in 2018, the Paris Dialogue on Archaeological LiDAR. So that you kind of saw a split between the two sides. And it was kind of interesting that they noted that people from Europe more favored the open data, where people from the Americas more favored the sovereignty of the nations and their kind of ability to restrict who has what and kind of make their own personal choices with it. So this is obviously just a big ethical conundrum because both sides are kind of valid. And so it's like, obviously you want to try to promote the research and the data and the share of knowledge as archaeologists and researchers, but also, again, you kind of have to consider the cultural considerations and security of the nations that obviously they want to keep themselves protected. And also kind of discuss some of the pros and cons of some of the LiDAR data storage. So they noted that some of the sites just have limits in the size and file types. Some sites require open data, so once you put it on that site, then you kind of lose authority over it, then it's kind of just out there. And they also noted that one of the sites lacks multi-generational storage, and I'm not entirely sure what they mean by this. I have to go back. That's something that I'm going to go back and look at as I finish the paper. And they also noted that these debates are not exclusive to LiDAR, but kind of extend to all archaeological discoveries. And they also noted questions about kind of the costs and the benefits from open access and noting conflicts of interest. So they noted that obviously everyone wants data to be free, because just for the open access, but then they were considering, well, then it's not free to run the data to collect it, so who's paying for it? And if it's a private thing, then they want their investments back in some form. So that poses a cost or a challenge for free data, as well as some of the organizations that have a lot of the data, then it could be seen as the paper observed that some of those big organizations that have the data are kind of also pushing for open access, which they noted could be a conflict of interest. So as the more they push like more accessible data, the more people will come to them because they have all the data. So that can be obviously more kind of in some ways viewed as a kind of a self-promotion kind of idea, which raises some concerns. And this is something that a snippet that I really saw that was cool, directly from the paper. So it says, no one wants to enshrine a LiDAR elite of established scholars, but a local review of LiDAR publications indicates that what might be occurring is the opposite, and opening up of research opportunities for young scholars. Within the Belizean archaeology, LiDAR has often created new potential research for areas for graduate students. So I thought that was just apt for obviously what a lot of us are doing here. So I thought that was just cool. But obviously this is within the context of Belize, but I just thought that was really cool. So more specifically within the Belize archaeology, they kind of noted that in Belize, they focus more on the self-sovereignty. So the Belize Institute of Archaeology has full authority over who they give access to. So they noted that they kind of insinuated that access to the data for people who live in Belize and are scholars or graduate students or any of that form is actually really easy. It's just more difficult for people outside of Belize. So obviously, and they mentioned that people outside from other countries kind of have noted some opposition to this, but they countered with the idea that open data does not necessarily provide equality for as much as people think it will. And they noted that within Belize, obviously they don't have the well-developed industry or internet workings that a place in like France or the UK would. So even if you open the data, that doesn't mean that all people in Belize would necessarily have access to that data. So it wouldn't, in that way, it would actually be benefiting foreign countries more than it would be benefiting the people of Belize, which is kind of the big reason they've decided to keep it more regulated. So that's pretty much where it stopped. And I was about halfway through, so I'm definitely interested in reading more. I thought it was just interesting to talk about the ethics of it.
Stay tuned to the conclusion next week. One thing that this makes me think of is in the United States, especially in Illinois when I was there, each county was responsible for generating its own LiDAR data. And so what that did was LiDAR collection is expensive, right? So County X would spend a couple of $100,000 generating LiDAR data, but then they wouldn't share it because they were like, well, we paid for it. We want to use it. Why should we give it to you for free? And so you end up with this bad system of like, you had to like email that county to get the data, and then like someone maybe would email you back and like give you access. And so everybody had to like set up their own little like FTP servers. It was a real nightmare. And so if you know, and it's a fair point, right? Like Cook County paid for its LiDAR data. Why should we give it to you? We should use it for Cook County, people that live in Cook County. But I think the reality is that the LiDAR, the value of LiDAR is not always predictable, right? So like, I think its use cases go far beyond whoever financed it initially. And so the greater good is served by being open with the data. That said, you know, I think it's perfectly reasonable that like Belize gets to control what it wants to do with the data. I think that trumps the other argument, but I think that what they should do with it is open it up. You know, it's their decision, but I suggest that they open it. And I think it's probably true enough that, you know, people in Belize are gonna get less value of it than maybe an archaeologist working from France or whatever, but that's not always true, right? Like, I think 10 years down the line, like as their infrastructure builds up, now that data is available and it's ready to catalyze whatever they want to do with it. So I think the overall benefits mostly outweigh the concerns. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts next week. It's a good discussion to have. Like, I like that these papers are out there. There's a lot of sort of ethics in remote sensing work being done. In fact, Alec Matthews in the department, I think, is pretty interested in stuff like that. Awesome. Well, we'll wrap things up then today. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you back next week.
Have a good weekend.
Sean, did you want to chat for a minute about
The metrics.
Thanks, Sean. Stop the recording.
All right. Thank you.
See you later.